Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Colony. So, this, of course, is a film that is on Netflix, but it's a Saban film. Immediately, the thing that kind of pops into my head is the same people that brought you Go Go Power Rangers, and also we have Jay and Silent Bob reboot, are to give you this film called The Colony. So, how did I feel about this movie? Overall, would I say for anyone to go out of their way to watch this film? So, The Colony really has this kind of like Oblivion slash, like, I would say Planet of the Apes, Mark Wahlberg kind of flavor to it. It kind of has this, like, I would have to say it has some kind of like Waterworld kind of vibes to it a little bit here and there. As far as kind of just visuals and looks of certain characters, really all that I just said, like, has nothing to do with like, oh my god, story wise. No, like, we really have it to where it comes on to visuals of what I would really compare this to. Maybe the Mark Wahlberg Planet of the Apes movie, like, there's something about that where you can kind of say, like, it's like the story is kind of similar to that, out of all the stuff that I've just named. So, really, it's just a blatant copy and paste of Planet of the Apes, but it is what it is. Really have it to where in this movie, what how would I really feel about this movie? Well, I honestly just find this movie to be boring. For me, like, it started out interesting, but the longer that we just go on to this film, I'm like, man, this is such a flat film, and there's never a real part legitimately where it picks up for me. Or we just have two people in a well for far too long, and we keep going into this well part of this movie, and I'm like, man, when is this movie gonna pick up? And it never does. Uh, Plus, the cast will kind of tell you like the big heavy hitters that are to be kind of recognizable, and I'm just like, man, this is to just be a movie that they just, again, it's another one of those kind of tossing out there things to just kind of see if they can get people interested in another post-apocalyptic movie, because they're just chucking out content at this point. For anybody, it's just like, how quickly can we just make a film? It's like, that's really what they're doing. Like, how quickly can we just consistently make content, because we're just so worried that there may be a time where we can't make content. So let's just keep bashing this out. It doesn't have to be a good story. It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be a good story anymore. It just has to exist. That's what's really going on as far as content goes, because they're just chucking it out there now in droves. Because I guess we just have it. We have to have it to where, like, these guys have to be like, hey man, since we have money to blow, finally, now since we have money to blow, we had to probably make a ton of cutbacks. But now, since we have money to blow, let's freaking just chuck it out there. This is just another one of those post-apocalyptic movies where they do the dumb thing, which is to try to be like very intelligent, and like, really, I don't think there's an audience for this film. With the exclusion of just kind of people just wanting to go like, what the heck is this? Let's go and check into it. Those kind of people. Like, because it feels like this movie is to probably reach out to an intelligent audience that couldn't have been probably bothered to watch this kind of film. Um, and so, like, I think they're going. This movie is trying to go for an audience that really isn't going to be there to see this film. Uh, but I could be wrong. Um, I would just say that I would never again watch this movie. Or, like, I honestly regret watching this film. So I would have to say, like, I can't justifyingly even call this an okay film. I would just have to just call this a bad movie that I know a lot of people will see. Because, like I said, I kind of built it up as like, oh, this kind of has like a Planet of the Apes kind of thing or approach to it. And people are like, ooh, let me see what he means by that. And then they'll go on and be like, yeah, this is so boring. Sorry, I wouldn't recommend this movie. It's so slow and it's 2 hours. This movie does not need to be 2 hours. This movie could have been an hour and 30, and I would have been happy with that. Uh, because we really don't get enough of anywhere to give us in this film. By the time that we're actually getting somewhere, it's really by the end of the film, because it's just a lot of putzing around, and it feels kind of like the Wolverine movie for a bulk of this thing, where we consistently have Blake's character who is to consistently climb this well and be checking through these holes to see what's going on with these people. So yeah, I would just say that this is just like, I wouldn't say that this is an awful film, but it's a film that it's boring enough that it's a bad film, but people will see it anyway. So that's my kind of a real thing, is just the fact that people will see this film. People may see this more than once for some odd reason. And because this movie is to be just uh, visually intriguing enough to people. I got like hooked by the details of this movie because I went in here thinking, I'm like, is this going to be another garbage movie that Netflix is going to try to feed me? And then I go through the description, I'm like, the description makes this sound really interesting. Like, I guess some typhoon or tidal wave was to go through and hit the earth, and now they're going on and checking on survivors, as we have a lot of people who had ran from Earth to go on to another planet, and then had gone on to go to this other planet to come back here. So, and I'm not going to remember that other planet's name, just being aware of that. Because immediately I'm just like, how quickly can I lose all this information from this film? Like, we have stuff like transmitters being used in this movie. We have certain scientific technologies, and we. It's just. We have a film here that is to feel like it didn't need to have a story, it just need to intrigue people. And so this movie is like a clickbaiting thing that goes absolutely nowhere with this story or with the amount of stuff that it could have had something to do. It decides just like, like, we came here, we did something, and then we left. So that's this movie. We came here, we did something, and we left. That has to be just like, the bar is set so freaking low for this film. So let's go into it. Let's go into that double five. Let's just go into spoilers. So it is about that time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So we have Blake and we have Tucker, who are the only ones alive out of their ship, because they, of course, are to crash land with the Ulysses 2. Because evidently the first one had crash landed, and that, of course, was to be Blake's father. Heaven forbid this guy has a name, right? Fuck. Like, that's the thing that I hate about the laziness of just either IMDb or the laziness of just like a credit of a film, that they couldn't have even been bothered to give someone an actual name, because it's like, well, they don't actually say it in the movies, so it doesn't really matter. It just matters that like the relationship to the main character, and that's all that really matters. So they could have actually called him Papa in the credits, because technically that's what Blake calls him in this film, is Papa. So they could have called him that, but they couldn't have been bothered. So Blake goes on and is to see the only guy left alive is to be this guy called Tucker. So we have Tucker going on and doing some stuff inside the ship while Blake is to go and do recon. So Blake is to go on and do recon here, and is to try and see if the soil is to be good here. We have at one point where Tucker is to be wearing this mask over his face, because at their other planet that they're on, they can go about them doing what they're doing, but they are to be wearing like respirators or like masks at all times, I guess. So we go on and we have Blake and we have Tucker, and we have Blake taking off Tucker's mask, and he's like, wait a minute, we can breathe here? And what about the radiation? And Blake's like, no, it's fine. So we go on and we have Blake assessing some, I guess, animal life here, to kind of see that, I guess, some animals had kind of radioactively combined together, oddly enough. And I guess there are some animals where, of course, Blake is not familiar with, and all of a sudden she gets attacked by one of them. Attacked, but not to the point of her getting killed. She gets like a little scrape or something like that. So we go on here, and we all of a sudden are to have Blake and Tucker eventually get attacked by these, I guess they're called mud people, or muds. So these muds are to go on and attack Tucker and are to stab into him because they're wanting to take his stuff, steal all of his. And so eventually Blake, they are to go and take her and drag her to their camp. And so both of these characters are chucked into this well, where Blake is to have to try and climb up this well in Wolverine style without her bone claws, go and try to peek through these holes to see what's going on. She does that numerous times. So we go on here, and evidently these people do not speak this thing called English very well, because we have at some points we have an English we have these conversations going on between these people that aren't to actually be, of course, subtitled out. So all you're hearing is blah 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 blah, basically from these people, and I'm like, wow, like, so I'm gonna spend however long of this movie with people just like blah 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 blah, because I don't understand what they're saying here. And like, I'm kind of wondering if there was an actual language that these guys are speaking, because then I don't want to offend anybody. But I couldn't understand what these people were saying in this film. And there was no subtitles, there was nothing to cover any of that. So I'm like, so this movie is a waste. Land? Kind of feels like the more recent movie that I just watched called The Wasteland, but that was like done in 19th century Spain or some goofy thing, where that movie was also a waste. So Blake is eventually calling out for medical equipment, because I guess she's the medic of her group. I guess, lucky enough, right, that she survived. So in order for Blake to help out her other associate Tucker, she then goes on and is to take her medical equipment and help out one of their people, and then they end up going back and still like not quite yet giving her any much of her equipment that can really help her. So Tucker is to go on and say it's like, well, hey, I'll only slow you down, and so like I might as well just take a cyanide capsule and kill myself off here. And I'm like, oh my god! Like we have this guy who just takes his cyanide capsules and was like, I'm gonna die for the many. I'm like, what the is this? And so we consistently have the Blake's people and any people that are to understand uh, this stuff. We have them consistently saying for the many, for the many. I'm like, what is this, like Spock from Star Trek, where it's like uh, the few outweigh the many or the one? Like, and I'm just like, say what now? All right, just let's go into this movie. So we go on, and the further on we're just in this well, just chillaxing it out here. Eventually, all these people are to be won over by Blake, and so we go on, and we have Blake like starting to spend some time with these people. We have I guess Narvik, who or Niarvik. I'm not even gonna bother trying to like figure out how to pronounce these people's names. It's a waste. So Narvik is a girl who can speak both English and whatever gibberish that these people are saying. So we have at least one person through this movie that can speak frickin' English. Man, is that great. No offense, like I'm not trying to just say it's like, oh, well, I need a movie where like people speak my language. No, I'm just saying that like I'm just frustrated at the fact that we're having a whole movie where it's like blah 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 blah. I'm like, and there's no subtitles for this. I'm like, why am I watching this film? It's like War of the Planet of the Apes, where like 80% of that movie is sign language between the apes, and I'm like, oh my god, can't you get these monkeys to talk? Isn't that the point of the film? To get these monkeys to say words. But no, let's sign language it out, because, man, this is going to be an exciting film. So, pushing on. So, eventually we have Blake finding out that it seems that these people can go and bang it out at any certain point in time. But here's the thing. These people can't reproduce children on this planet Earth. It seems that only the people from the other planet can actually produce children. We have at one point where Blake is honestly bleeding from her down belows, and so it's like, okay, I didn't really understand why I had to like see that in this film. Like I was kind of expecting her to have some kind of prison purse, so to speak. But I guess that seemed unlikely because I was like, okay, where the heck did the transmitter go? And we end up finding out that the transmitter is in some baby doll this whole entire time, and people are to just continue to have this doll just being strolled around here. So we go on into this film, and so eventually Blake, as well as a number of young kids, are all to be chucked in to this well again because we find out that these people are to have their place being scavenged by these raiders or by these other guys who are just wanting their so we go on and we have Blake who's hiding in this well as people are getting murdered and killed and whatever because the Wolverine. Anyways, like Blake has to see the action unfold while she's in this well, and I'm like, man, so even in an action sequence, you can't really see what's going on. Isn't that great? It's Tony the Tiger time because motherfuckers, it's getting great. Anyways, so we eventually have it to where one guy is to open up this well to have all the kids go under the water. And we even have a baby who gets freaking tossed down into this well. And so the baby has to be dipped underwater. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Not only did I not want to see a baby being chucked down to somebody, on top of that, I don't want to be seeing a baby being dunked underwater. That just, like, there's so much about that where I'm like, I don't want to see this shit. I don't care. Dad, you wronged that baby. You wronged that baby. So, so after everything is seemingly clear, we go on and we have Narvik, who's kind of like, hey guys, like, come on up, because everybody's dead. So, we eventually have Blake, who is to go on and make her way to these guys that are on these boats. And so Blake is to go on and kind of want to go and find her stuff, her things, her transmitters and whatever. So Blake ends up to forcibly go on to be on this ship, and since she has nowhere to go, she just drops in with all of the other like non-English speaking characters, and one guy ends up giving her like a poncho, and because I guess she's cold, so he's like, hey, here's a poncho, without actually saying here's a poncho. So I guess this guy was maybe just thinking, like, maybe you and I go bang bang bang, you know what I'm saying? Whatever in this film. So, Blake ends up going to this ship carrier, this big, massive, like, naval ship-like thing. And so we end up having a guy here, who I think is to be called, Palling? I'm gonna say Palling. We have a guy named Palling who is to go on and he of course is to notice that these guys are to have a unique weapon, and he's going on and having this weapon and he's holding it up and he's just like, okay, like, who had this weapon? Like, is this person still alive, kind of thing? Who's the one? So all of a sudden we have Palling or Pauling. I don't know the pronunciation. These names are freaking goofy. You can't just have a name of everybody that's to be like Steve and Bob and whatever, because this is like New Earth whatever. So we have it to where everybody has goofy and odd like names that maybe they just over time was like, well, my name was Steve and now it's Slurve. Sure, it's Slurve now. So immediately, Pauling, I guess, is to pick the magical character of Blake and is to take her to go and meet a guy named Gibson. And so all of a sudden Blake is to be familiar with Gibson because Gibson was to go on with Blake's father to come to this planet to be the guys to first land here and to see if everything's all good and peachy and whatever. So let me pause here for 1 second. I want to check something. Kepler is the other planet. Because eventually we have one kid who is to kind of ask like where she's from, I guess, and so Blake is to explain in the well that this is Earth and she's from another planet called Kepler, and we had people coming from Kepler going and making their way back to Earth to see if it's uh, less radioactive, and that also they are to find out that certain, I guess, animals are to produce either uh, with another gender or just by themselves. So, but we go on here, and eventually we have it to where Blake is talking to Gibson, and so we eventually have it to where Gibson is to go and hide Blake's father from her, because Blake's father is actually to be on this boat. But the real reason why he is to be hiding Blake's father from Blake is simply because Blake's dad is to be considered a traitor. Because let's go with, instead of saying Blake's father every single time, let's just call him Papa, so that's easy. So we can just say Papa every single time. So Papa is to, of course, have decided to go and find himself one of the girls and wanted to go off with her and create this rebellion. And so Gibson wouldn't allow that, so he just kind of imprisoned Papa to uh, to eventually this just room, so they can kind of just keep him there, because like this guy is too intelligent to not have him like be killed off here, so he's just imprisoned. So Blake is to go on and meet up with Papa eventually when she is to find out herself through through of course Neil, because Neil had gone on and was consistently getting messages from I guess Papa. So Blake is to figure out where Papa is, and so she finds him and reunites with him. And so eventually this is going to be slowly but surely a thing where Blake is going to start rebelling against Gibson. And so we go on here and we of course have Blake, who is to start to find out what Gibson and all their people are doing. So Gibson is to consistently try and steal all of these women in hopes that at some point these women will eventually be like fertile through certain generations, because they're trying to get the youngest girls that they can, um, hoping that at some point they'll be able to produce a child. So, because it's kind of like the Utopia show that I just had watched recently, where supposedly John Cusack's character was trying to prevent people from reproducing for a number of cycles, meaning like a number of generations. And so that's what's kind of really going on here, is hoping that a certain generation of girl will eventually go on and be able to reproduce children, be fertile and whatever. So to the point of us almost trying to figure out who is to be a Kepler guy to a Kepler girl, so that way they can produce children for the next generation of people. because we have Gibson who's going on and telling, of course, Blake here that the Kepler people can produce children. So, and we end up finding out that Neil is one of those, because we end up finding out that Neil is actually Papa's son, which makes Blake Neil's brother, or Neil's sister, I mean. So we go on here, we have Gibson, who is to eventually find the transmitter and is going and sending this transmitter to eventually be put out a signal to the Kepler people that it seems that there are to have life on this ship. We had Blake, who's also asking about the first ship and wanting to know if she could go on and use its transmitter or its kind of its things to send this information out about the things that she was to go and find about this planet. And Gibson is like, well, I'm sorry, but the first ship is to be destroyed. I guess that again is to be another thing that Gibson is at some point to lie about. So we eventually have at some point where we have this confrontation between Blake and Gibson after Blake is to go on and find the one girl who can speak English and is to go on and find that girl's daughter. And so, or I guess the girl that she possibly adopted, not quite sure. So, because how can they still produce children here? But Blake is kind of just to be baffled that there are technically babies on this world because it doesn't make sense. Or it shouldn't make sense. How are they going and having children here? It baffles and confuses these people. So we go on here and we have Blake, who is to combat with Gibson after going on and killing Paling, who is to be looking for, of course, the one little girl who had escaped. So Paling is to just go and try to force Blake into an intimate moment here. And so Blake goes on and is to put put her her pill that is to, of course, her cyanide capsule into this guy's mouth to kill him off. And because we had Paling, how he found out Blake is to be this girl, he ends up finding her dog tag, and he's like, oh, this must be you. So, because he, kind of figured, he's looking around, and it's like, oh, it must be this girl. So, now we have that whole dog tag come into play again when Blake is to give a cyanide capsule to Paling and kill him off here. So we go on and we have Blake, who is to go and take all of these survivors and put them on this boat as if they're going to get away here. But Blake is to go on and want to find Neil because Neil is with Gibson and this other woman. And so Gibson is to hold a gun to Neil, and because we have Neil, who I guess is to know both English and these other people's language. So it seems like if anybody's going to be a communicator, it's going to be Neil at some point. So we eventually have it to where Blake is to drop her gun, and eventually we have both Blake and Gibson going and fighting it out within the water, having Blake go on and try to choke Gibson here and drown him in the water, but accidentally Blake is to also drown herself in the process. So we have the one girl that is to be Narvik go and drop into the water, go and swim after Blake and try to revive her by, of course, doing CPR on her, which eventually is to have Blake spit out water and realize that she is to be still alive here. So we have Papa, who is to kind of see that his daughter is okay, and that they go on this boat, and then they're just like off, assuming that the Kepler planet is possibly going to have everybody come back from that planet to possibly Earth at some point. Is kind of what we have to naturally assume here. Not quite sure. But with that said, I think I'm going to wrap this one up. This movie is like, it really stretches itself. Really, I'm fine with technically the runtime on this one. An hour and 44 minutes, like, because either way, this movie just kind of drags the way it does. So like, we have really nothing to do in this movie, but because they don't like. There's a whole bunch of like, anything that's to kind of come out of this film is to be this like science lingo, and I'm like, oh my god, like this movie. Ah. But yeah, so that's all I think I want to say about this one. Um, Probably really, if people wanted me to go in much more detail about this movie, like we had the one scene where we had a young Blake who was to go on and watch her papa, of course, leave to go to Earth, and he had given her matches to eventually light this match to kind of like show the actual reasoning for why a flame is orange, and all the carbons and all the stuff that is to be inside a flame. And we also have Papa, who is to go on and mention about plants, how like plants are going to be very much more difficult to grow on Kepler than I guess on Earth. So yeah, so we go on, and we have at one point that Blake is watching this rocket go off for her father to go to Earth, and we have a bunch of people are going for the many, for the many, for the many, and like we had the kids like for the many, and then that's where the trailer stops. Yeah, I think I covered everything. I think everything is to be done and covered with and whatever, out of scene and whatever. But like, the more and more that I'd probably go and talk about this movie, the more and more I'd probably pull some kind of something that I forgot about. Because this movie just manages its content just like really gripping. I was kind of hoping for like a much more action film. Like man, like I was kind of hoping for there to be um, really something here that would consistently like hold my attention. Like I was watching the whole time of this Scream, but I'm just like, man, I would rather just be doing anything else than watching this film. Like a much more thing that I know is going to be much more like adrenaline pumping, like, ooh yeah, let's see what happens here. Instead of this, that is to just be this kind of just slug of a film that just kind of like snails on for an hour and 44 minutes. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here because I don't think I want to spend any more time on this movie. Uh, Really, there's a lot of different ways of which that I review a film, and a lot of times you're going to see this here, where at some points I'm going to go really in depth about a film and go through dialogue and every little bit about it and blah, 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 blah. but but then there's also other times where I'm just like, why should I spend so much effort on one film that is to be not that good in my eyes? But a lot of people could have liked this film. A lot of people could have loved this film. A lot of people could have liked the science approach of it. A lot of people could have said like, "Oh, well, you're just like this kind of person that is to not like an intelligent film," and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's fine, that's okay. So at the end of the day, I'll just go on and do another review of something else. that'll catch my more attention. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.